Welcome to Nugget 137 with Steve Groman, and this will be a 4 or 5-part series that we're calling our SETI series. And Steve, tell us what SETI stands for.
Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence.
Okay,
Think they'll find any?
No.
No.
Well, I guess we will take off in this article. It was the cover story in Discover magazine in December of 2020. And the title is, Are We Alone?
They've always been looking for ET, haven't they?
Yes.
Yeah, the article starts off, life beyond might not exist, or we just don't know how to find it. Science or science fiction? I guess anybody that's ever been to our misconceptions about space lesson, we talk about science versus science fiction. It's amazing how many of these guys in the science field have been involved heavily in science fiction, isn't it?
Yes, and it's interesting how they are constantly popping those words together more than ever instead of keeping them separate. In this article, they have this beautiful pink picture that to me looks like somewhere wonderful like Death Valley. This artist concept shows exoplanet Kepler 1649c orbiting around its host red dwarf star. The exoplanet is in its star's habitable zone, the distance where liquid water could exist on the planet's surface. After searching for signs of alien life for nearly 60 years, some astronomers wonder whether it's really out there. Boy, that really long sentence has a lot of things packed in it, like artist concept could exist.
Well, in the way they talk about its star, they call the sun a star. And once again, in our misconceptions about space, where we talk about God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, the lesser light to rule the night, and he made the stars also. Stars different than those two lights. They always call everything a star.
And they talked about that they've been searching for alien life for 60 years and whether it's really out there. But the Bible says in Isaiah 45,
it says, For thus saith the Lord that created the heavens, God himself that formed the earth and made it. He hath established it. He created it, not in vain. He formed it to be inhabited. I am the Lord, and there is none else. I find it amazing. He says he created the heavens. God himself formed the earth. He made it. He established it. He created it. Why? He formed it. Why? To be inhabited. He put this place here for life.
Earth is the only place that's inhabited. That's why they've been searching for 60 years.
They search for another 60 and never find it.
Yeah. And this article starts off, when physicist and author Stephen Webb was a kid in the 1960s, humans were finally reaching beyond Earth. Satellites orbited the planet. Rockets blasted people into space. Astronauts walked on the moon. And in the distance, Mars, with its red soil and hints of ancient water, titillated imaginations and beckoned Earthlings onward.
That's quite a story, isn't it?
Yeah, it goes on. I grew up, I guess you'd say, in a science-fictional world, says Webb, a bald British man whose alternately arched and furrowed eyebrows can tell a story of excitement and confusion almost as well as words do.
Let's all sit around the campfire.
Yeah, it sounds good. But you know what's crazy is I was born in the 60s and did grow up and watching Lost in Space, The Jetsons, Star Trek. Growing up in Houston, NASA was a big deal. I can relate to this man, even though I'm kind of making fun here.
It's exciting stuff when you think about it. If it could be real, imaginations start wandering off, don't they?
Right, and we were hearing about it in cartoons, like I said, the Jetsons,
right.
And then just regular programs like Lost in Space, although that one was a bit silly. Not that Star Trek wasn't silly, but it had a little bit more serious content. NASA was giving like the technical side of it here in Houston, so we were bombarded with it on all ends.
And like this article goes on, during that same childhood period, he was immersing himself in actual science fiction in addition to this non-fictional reality that was so cool it seemed fake. Well, that sounds like somebody very famous just last year that said something very similar to that.
That's true.
It must be real. It looks so fake.
Right.
That's the way that went.
Try and figure out who that was. He's very involved in space.
It goes on. He devoured books that were written by famous science people, including Isaac Asimov. The information that he got from these authors, that's the lens that shaped his view of everything, everyone in space.
He came of age, he says, with the idea that the galaxy contains weird and wonderful life forms that one day we could go out and meet. And that, again, comes from the science fiction writings of that time.
Right.
And he held on to that idea tightly until, that is, as a young man studying physics, he read an August 1984 article in the magazine Asimov's Science Fiction, written by a geologist and science fiction author, Stephen Gillette. And there we go again, someone that is in a what we'll call a hard science, but is also a science fiction author. You'd be surprised how much those two lives cross. It was called simply the Fermi Paradox, and it proposed something Webb had never considered. If the universe is so big, it likely produced intelligent life on other planets. Some of those lives must have built spaceships, even at relatively slow speeds, given enough time. That's everything about evolution is given enough time, right? They dispersed across the galaxy, just as humans had across the globe.
For some reason, all ET life out there that they're looking for is advanced beyond us.
And if that's the case, as physicist Enrico Fermi famously wondered, where is everybody? Why haven't we met any extraterrestrials? And you know what's interesting is I did go to U of H here in Houston and took several astronomy courses, and one of the first days the professor said that, okay, we're not even going to go into aliens, we're not going to talk about them. He goes, there's no such thing. And his point was, if they come all the way here, they certainly would stop, and they wouldn't just hang out with some guys in the swamps in Louisiana, and we all just cracked up. And it kind of stuck with me. Yes, if they made this long trek to here, they would certainly say hi and introduce themselves.
You would think so.
You would think so.
You would think so.
This article is going to talk about maybe why they didn't.
Yeah, he sums up another thing here. He says, it just hit me with the force of a sledgehammer that all these things that science fiction and science as well had told me to expect, that one day soon we would make contact with aliens, and that maybe we'd go out and have all these Star Trek adventures with them. Maybe that was all wrong.
Again, science fiction, Star Trek telling us what we should expect.
Yeah, and remember Captain Kirk, the famous quote of his?
Yes.
When he was asked,
you've done so much to have people enter the science field.
How do you reconcile science with science fiction? And he said, they're both the same.
That's true.
And I show a lot of articles over the years was in science publications or from science publications that say the same thing. It's hard to separate science from science fiction.
Just as Asimov had given, Asimov had taken away, and Webb found himself in a new and unfamiliar universe. Now, when I was reading this, I thought, Asimov had given and Asimov had taken away. You know, they use Bible lingo here.
They actually do it quite a lot.
God has gives and takes away, and we sing the song.
I know we've talked about this so many times, but God made the heaven, the earth, the sea, and all that in them is. Right there in the middle of the Ten Commandments, He confirms everything was made in that 6-day time frame, and He confirms, just like we've read in Isaiah, that this earth was put here to be inhabited. He talks about the heavens, the stars, and several constellations, and all that in His Word all throughout. This is the place that He put life on. So this is all just fanciful fairy tale stuff.
Many of you know Enrico Fermi was an Italian who lived in Rome, and he is basically known as the architect of the nuclear age and the architect of the nuclear bomb. And if you want to research those topics, you have to start with Enrico Fermi. But continuing on. So, and the point of this is Webb was like, he learned about science and science fiction through Asimov, and then he comes across this Fermi paradox. It says that maybe there's nobody even out there. Maybe we're all wrong, and that blew his mind. And so he started compiling information. He talks about that, and then he ended up writing a book that he entitled,
If the Universe is Teeming with Aliens, Where is Everybody? 75 Solutions to the Fermi Paradox and the Problem of Extraterrestrial Life. That's quite a title. But you know, the thing is, we're really trying to make this point, and we haven't really said it this nugget yet, but we have in previous ones. The whole extraterrestrial issue, the alien issue, space and everything has become such a major, major thing in churches with people today. People are enamored with this kind of stuff. They're enamored and they're excited about it, and they believe all this stuff. So many people do, and they're falling victim of it often at a very young age. We have to realize everything. We need to go back to what is thus saith the Lord, and what does the Bible say about all this stuff.
It sounds like fun, but this is serious stuff. And as we've mentioned before, space is the new dinosaurs. It is the thing that is taking children away. You may not find these nuggets interesting, but let your children listen to them because they know what this stuff is. They're well versed on this science, extraterrestrials, and everybody's waiting for extraterrestrials to land here and cause some sort of havoc and mayhem. But finishing up this particular nugget.
This next sentence, talking about the book, in it, Webb argues with himself, vacillating between his childhood vision of a populated universe and that metaphorical sledgehammer. And once again, childhood vision. So many young ones these days, even in churches, are being drawn into all these ideas, and there's no such thing as extraterrestrial life out there. There's no ET out there that anybody's ever going to find. God made this place to be inhabited, and that's the only one He says that about. There's no evidence for any of this. It is a whole bunch of fanciful fairy tale, make-believe, hopeful stuff that many of these people are trying to consider true and convince people that it's true. But like he says here, after all these years coming up with nothing.
Right, 60 years of looking. I can see that I could have followed Webb's footsteps and gone just like it because growing up and loving this stuff, I just really, really liked it. I realized that a lot of it was nonsense, and I do thank that college professor for actually saying what he said because it always stuck with me because it was funny. It made sense also.
To wrap up for this nugget, maybe SETI scientists have not found any extraterrestrials because none exists. That's a good possibility, eh?
And the correct possibility.
Yeah. Other scientists hold up the possibility that extraterrestrial smarts don't resemble ours, or that scientists are so stuck on Earth's current technology that they're blinded to more exotic possibilities. Perhaps if those same researchers set their agendas right, the coming set of 60 years will help Earthlings figure out which hypothesis and which vision of the cosmos is correct.
You know what that means.
They're going to write the same kind of thing 60 years from now, if we're still around.
Right. And they're admitting, see, it is a hypothesis, and they don't even know which one's correct. So we, as Christians, should not grab a hold of what one particular scientist or those in a certain time frame are saying, because they're admitting they've been doing this for 60 years, and it may take another 60 years to come up with something else, and they still are not going to come up with the truth until they look to the Word of God and see what Isaiah 45
And people are very dogmatic
says.
about it, and we can't be when we're talking about science. It just cannot be. And again, we love science. Science is fun. We do science experiments at our meetings. This kind of thing is not science. It's science fiction.
And they admit it. That's what this whole article is going to continue on proving. Well, thank you.